Greetings. Today I'd like to do a quick first look at the new Magewell IP to USB Pro Convert adapter. This is a device that allows you to take video sources in over Ethernet and convert them to USB in the format of essentially a virtual webcam. This was announced around about the time of NAB 2025, went up for pre-order, at least here in the States, 2-ish weeks ago, and to my surprise, it has actually just come in. So I'd like you to come along with me as we take a first look at it. You might be wondering, well, what do you need a device like this for? If you're working in an event or even an installed, like a venue where different people bring their machines up, you might not always be able to install things like NDI tools or OBS or eCam or whatever your favorite app is onto the device. And yet you still need to be able to get feeds from your event or venue into that device. So what this does is it allows you to bring in NDI, SRT, RTMP, both push and pull. I think those are the main ones, and convert them into UVC, Universal Video Class, for USB. And that way the computer just sees it as a webcam. You also get UAC, Universal Audio Class, 2 channels, so you can get audio from your NDI network from the source that you're pointing at. And then it also shows up as an Ethernet adapter on the computer as well. And that Ethernet adapter is not passed through to this network jack. This is just for the video in. That virtual Ethernet is so that you can access the config page within the device from the computer. The box, pretty bare bones box, minimal packaging, which is good. It has the device, and then it has 2 USB-C to, and one's to USB-C and the other is to USB-A for connecting to the computer. These are about 1 meter or a little over 3 feet in length, and the USB-C for connecting into the Magewell, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a locking connector. It has thumb screws on either side of the USB port. So it's nice that it's locking, but it's not quite the same as where I've seen most locking USBs, where the screw hole for the lock is just above the USB-C port. So if you already have some existing locking cables that are longer, unfortunately those are not going to work with this device. There's basically nothing to see or configure on the device itself. Like I say, it's got Ethernet port for your video feed in, USB-C for connecting to the computer. You got the 2 holes on either side for the thread locks to hold the USB in place, and then you got a little status light yes, on this side. So very minimal. All the config is done through the web interface. This device supports up to 1080p 60, and we will give that a try. What it does not support, unfortunately, is any kind of 4K input. You might be saying, well, what do you need 4K for? Video conferencing apps, they all downscale to 720p or worse anyway. 4K might be nice if you were running something like OBS or eCam and we're just doing a local recording, although if you're doing that sophisticated, you probably have the ability to connect an Ethernet adapter to the computer and do NDI directly. But what the real problem I see is with no 4K input support is that if you are in a venue, you're doing an event, your in-venue video feeds are 4K, putting it up on a big projector or video wall or whatever. But you also want to be able to grab that and send it into Zoom or other video conferencing apps so that remote viewers can see it. Well, now you got a problem because it doesn't take the 4K in. You would have to reduce your in-venue feeds to 1080p, and that might work. Depends on your venue and what your projections are and so forth. But keep in mind, this device does not support 4K, so if you require 4K, unfortunately, you're still probably going to have to go with a computer with an Ethernet adapter running NDI directly on the computer. So with that quick intro out of the way, let's switch over to the computer and see what this thing looks like and how it performs. Here I am on the computer. I have got the device connected, and if we open up System Profiler, look at USB, we can see that it is connected and that it is a 5 gigabit USB device. And it has added, if we look up here, an Ethernet interface that has by default the 66 network, and it acts as a DHCP server and gives the computer the .2 address. It's at the .1 address. And the default login, according to the quick start guide, is admin. And it wants to change. I'm going to say cancel because you all don't need to see me changing the password. I will do that later to something secure for reals. And so here we are on the dashboard. We can see the device, its serial number. Not doing much CPU wise at the moment. It's been up for 7 minutes. Currently there's no source configured because this is the first time I'm logging in. You can see that the Ethernet connection has gotten an IP on my NDI VLAN here at home, and it is 1 gigabit, even though the port that it's connected to could do up to 10 gig. It's a multi-gig port. It is not a multi-gig Ethernet interface in the device. And right now, it's doing very little traffic, obviously, because it's not sending, or rather not receiving anything yet. And then you can also see USB net. That's the interface that's presented to the computer. And like I say, that defaults to the 66 network. You can access this control page over its Ethernet interface. So if you've got this connected to a presenter's laptop or whatever that you don't control, you don't have to set it up through that. You can access it remotely via your NDI network. Let's take a quick look at some of the other tabs. So under options, you have the ability to flip horizontal, vertical. You can set the aspect ratio. If you've got a discovery server for NDI, you can select that. And then here you can also set what image does it provide when there is no signal. So if we come over to Google Meet, start an instant meeting. And let's switch from the built-in FaceTime camera to the Pro Convert. Now, the static image is obviously reversed because Google Meet tries to reverse your image so that you look left-right like you think you look when you're facing your computer. But that's just because Google Meet is flipping it that this is reversed, not because it's actually reversed. And I would not recommend flipping it in the Pro Convert options. We'll skip sources for a moment because that's probably where we're going to spend most of our time. We'll take a quick look at system, right? So you can rename the device. This is what it shows up on the network as. So I noticed that my Meraki switch did pick this name up and auto-discovered it. You can rename it how it shows up as a USB device to the computer. You can set it to auto reboot periodically. If you're familiar with the Magewell user interface, a lot of this stuff looks the same. You can generate API tokens, set the date and time, and so actually I am going to change that to US Central, apply. And for it to hit these NTP servers, obviously you must have network connectivity because it's doing it over the Ethernet port. It cannot go through the USB net through your computer because your computer's not routing that. And the time has not been updated because my NDI network is an internal VLAN that has no internet access. So what I would really need to do is come down here and say 92.168.80.1 and then hit apply. And now you can see that the time updated because it's getting it from the local default router interface on that VLAN. We can configure both USB interfaces, so if you need to set a static address, you can do so. Control Hub is you can link this to Magewell's Control Hub stuff for remote control. Security is loading your own web certificate in it. So right now you can see because it's a self-signed cert, it says not secure. This is where you would update the firmware. You can add and remove users or change the default username, and then you can also grab logs from the device, including export for download. So let's go back to sources. And so right now we have no source, and we can say add source, and here you can see all the different types, right? So NDI, RTSP, HTTPS, RTMP, pull and push, and then MPEG TS over several different formats. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do NDI. And with NDI, it supports full NDI as well as NDI HX. And so if we come here and we say search, so here we can see the various cameras that are available on my network. And so let's see what happens if we try selecting cam 1, because this one's set to 4K. And so if I say apply and then turn this on, we have nothing over here. And if we look at the dashboard, it says that it thinks it recognizes that there's the stream, and it actually says it's decoding it, but we're not actually getting video from it in here. So if we go back to sources, and I will edit this one, I'll say search, and then I will pick the tail air and say apply. So over here, it has not connected, not seeing any video. What if we turn this off, turn it back on? Still not getting anything from the tail air, which is an NDI HX thing. If we bring up video monitor and select the tail air, that works. And you can hear the audio from the tail air, and obviously there's a lot of background noise in this room. So that's interesting that it did not work with that. Let's see if we try a different source. So I'm going to say search, and I'm going to pick the other Birddog, and this one I have set to 1080-60. So if we hit apply, turn that on, and we immediately got video from that camera. And that camera is pointing at my audio rig for the wireless. Settings are not quite right, but it was just to be able to show that there's something coming in. I don't have the lights set up to make that actually look good. So let's see if we can get the tail air to work again. We select the tail air, hit OK, apply, turn this on, and it does not like the tail air. What if we instead choose the old HuddleCam? This thing is a very low quality device. It's ancient, but we'll see if it picks it up. Turn this on, and the HuddleCam came right up. And you can see up here that tail air just barely in the frame. And then we should be getting audio from this. So if we pull up audio video setup, you can see here's that Pro Convert. It shows up as a 2-channel input with 16-bit integer. It does not do 24-bit, but it's there. And let's see, Google, I thought that they had a little not doing the little squiggly for, is the audio set to the right interface? So let's pick Pro Convert for the microphone. If we click on settings, not getting anything. And what happens if we pull the Pro Convert up in Video Monitor? Well, we're not getting audio in here either, so there's something going on with the audio for the HuddleCam. So now the other thing we can do, we could edit this. We could call this HuddleCam. Stay in the call over here. We can add another NDI source, and so we'll call this Birddog. And we will search and pick that cam2. Transport mode, so if you're dealing with NDI, for example, you can pick. So we could say force it to do reliable UDP, timestamp mode. Not sure where it would get the time code from. I guess maybe if it's embedded. And then low bandwidth, I presume this means use the preview stream instead of the main stream. So if we hit apply, and we will turn off HuddleCam, we will turn on Birddog, and if we say edit, say low bandwidth, apply, I guess you can see it looks a little fuzzier. Edit this, turn off low bandwidth, apply. There's now a bit more definition around. If we look at the dashboard, you can see it's getting 120 meg in from the HuddleCam. And actually that should have audio. So if we set this back to the Pro Convert, look at settings. I don't see the little bouncing around thing. Let's just double check. Video monitor, Birddog cam, and you can definitely hear the noise in the room. So what if we instead, I'll put this back here. What if we instead open up photo booth? Does photo booth do audio? Doesn't sound like it's not coming through at any rate. The other thing is what kind of latency is there. So if I snap my finger, unfortunately, can't really hear that with my headset mic. So I couldn't see that. Well, actually, you don't hear it in them. Well, all right, the Scorpio should have picked that up, and you can see how much latency there is with when I snap my fingers versus when you saw it on screen. But when I do this, I'd say from when I snap my fingers to when I see it on screen is maybe about a second, which is, I think, pretty usable. And so the Birddog is doing NDI full bandwidth. And if we come back over to the HuddleCam is NDI HX. I don't think it's even HX2 or 3. It's that old. And you can see that it's running at 30 frames, about 16 megabits. And when we do the Birddog, it is 60 frames per second, 120 megabit, and working fine in both cases. And do not know why it does not like. The Tail Air has its current firmware. Actually, the Tail Air is now not even showing up because the Tail Air turned itself off for low battery. All right, so much for that. If we do an add source RTSP, you can give it, actually you can do PTZ control. So if you're using an app like Zoom that knows how to send PTZ commands over USB to a webcam, you can actually have that go out to the device. In fact, actually that works too, should work also with NDI, although I think with NDI it's just on by default. HTTPS, so where to pull from, RTMP push and pull, so server, stream key, etc. And then SRT, so you do have both caller and listener mode, IP, port, stream ID, what your SRT latency is. If you want to do encryption, then you can put in the passphrase, which audio track, and again, PTZ controls. So I mean, a lot of that is same kind of source stuff that Magewell has for all of their ProConvert devices. It's obviously shared code. So that was a quick first look at the Magewell IP to USB converter. It's a little interesting that it did not work with the OBSBOT Tail Air, which should be an NDI 6, I believe, implementation. So modern-ish. We'll have to see if that gets resolved at some point. It might be on the OBSBOT side, might be on the Magewell side, don't know. One other thing I'll mention that I should have said in the intro, this device is only powered via USB. It is not a PoE device. Now, granted, it's a pretty low power device according to the system settings, so shouldn't be an issue. And since it's really only usable when connected to a computer anyway, not a problem. The only reason I'd see you might want it powered via PoE is so that you could log into it and change settings when it's, say, sitting up at a podium and the computer has not yet been connected to it and you're trying to get prepared for the next presenter. Instead, you'd have to wait for the presenter to plug it in, and then you can get into it remotely over the network. At any rate, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and thank you for watching. Cheers.